Hello again, and welcome to this interview in the series that is all about empowering a league of extraordinary mothers on how to use the power of food to get more energy, a body we love, and that zest for life that we crave. Today we have with us Belinda Smith, who is a mother, wife, health and wellness coach, and believer in the power of parents. That is so perfect. Thank you so much, Belle, for being with us today.
My pleasure. And look, I have to say, Edwina, I am so honoured to be here in your lineup. I mean, our health journey started about nearly 8 years ago, and a lot of the people that you've been interviewing are kind of like my heroes, people that I've been following for quite a long time. So I'm actually really honoured to be here.
Well, we're honoured to have you, and I feel very much the same. All these people have been inspiring me for a long time. So to be in a position to bring this information in one lovely condensed kind of series for everybody, it's very exciting.
Definitely, I've been loving them.
Oh, good. So, look, let's start with your story, Belle. Can you introduce us a little bit to who you are and how you came to be doing the work that you do, please?
Yeah, certainly. Look, I guess our start into this really come about almost 8 years ago after our son was born. My husband, Israel, was diagnosed with postnatal depression, and he kind of just said, I don't really want to go straight down the path of antidepressants. Is there anything you can do to help me? And so I just started like the woman possessed, researching, and I kept uncovering more and more about the connection between food and how it makes our body feel. And, we started to tweak and change things. And along the way, he said things like, hey, Belle, I feel like a fog has lifted. And that was just as a result of removing gluten, because there was a lot of research linking gluten to depression. And that really inspired me. Like, I was like, wow, if that one change, can make a difference. I mean, we weren't out of the woods, obviously, but maybe there's more. And I kept researching, and the more I started to tweak and change, the bigger changes we started to see in him, but also in our daughter, who was 5 at the time. I mean, to be honest, I don't think, like many parents that I've spoken to over the last number of years, a lot of us don't realise that life can be different. But she was quite a temperamental little girl, like happy, intelligent, but then she would cry a lot. And you think, what's going on? She'd bite her nails until she would bleed. She had blue rings under her eyes. And we used to say, oh, she's beautiful one minute, psychotic the next, as a bit of a joke. Yeah. But as we started to change what we ate, her moods and temperaments totally mellowed out. She was a very different little girl. And in fact, today, like, she's a confident 12-year-old, and you would never imagine she's the same girl. And I guess the work that we currently do, which is about empowering children to make better food choices and making it easier, therefore, for parents to get them to eat healthier, came about purely by chance. I mean, by the time she got to year 2, she was getting teased about the foods in her lunch boxes, which, to be honest, there was no sandwich. So yes, it was a little bit different. It had fruits and vegetables into it, and no packaged food. So yeah, look, it looks different from most of the lunch boxes that kids were having. Yeah. But I spoke to her teacher and said, can you please get the kids to stop teasing her? Mm-hmm. And she said, why don't you come in and explain why you pack Indrani's lunchbox the way you do? And I kind of thought, how am I going to do this and make it fun? Because, like, I'm really just talking about fruits and vegetables, really, how do I make that fun? So I created some crazy experiments around different health ideas and called it the Mad Food Science Program, and just thought I'd have a bit of fun. But overnight, I had parents contacting me saying, wow, my son is going through our pantry and pulling out stuff and showing me what's in this food. And, the teacher actually went to see the principal because she learnt some things about some foods that were on offer at the canteen, and said, everyone in the school needs to do this. So I went back and we did more of the school, and then he spoke to another one, and I just started falling into doing this, sharing this message with children and getting the same kind of results. Yeah. Now, in the background, Israel was still, managing his depression largely through the foods that we were eating and sleep, and obviously, getting rid of caffeine and things like that. But we were still talking about how do we escape the stress that he felt from living in inner city Sydney.
Yeah.
And so we spoke about travelling Australia. And as I started studying and researching more, I found a massive, massive body of evidence that shows that today's generation of children are on a trajectory for not great long-term health.
Yeah.
And that kind of inspired me. And I said to him, look, if we're going to do this, why don't we, you know, and we're talking about getting a bus, why don't we turn it into a big mobile billboard and take it around Australia and share what we've learned? And if people stop us, we can say, this is what's going on with children's health. And so we did. We sold up our house, bought a bus, converted it into this big green machine that was like, you know, 19 metres long. And everywhere we went, people would say, hey, what's this about? And I'd tell them, and we would get all sorts of different stories from people. Yeah. So this has all our foray into eating real foods, which is really just simple. Eat lots more fruits and vegetables, minimise your processed food, drink more water.
Yeah.
Like that all come about purely because Israel got depression. And I'm pretty sure had that not have happened, I would have just kept doing my life of what I was before, happily thinking that I was feeding my family well and that I was cooking at home, because I cooked it nearly every night at home.
Yeah.
But when I look back and be honest with myself, I would open packets of Maggi mix and pour it in and stir water in, or the jars of, you know, chicken tonight. And I honestly felt that I was cooking at home.
Yeah.
And so I guess that depression was the turning point. That got me to really ask the question that we teach kids, what's in my food? Yeah. And that's changed everything. I'm just
so in awe. I just feel like the courage that it must have taken to sell up everything and start on that mission, it just takes the most admirable courage.
Looking back at times, some people said, were you guys mad? And I think probably, yes, we were. But do you know what? We've now reached 107 schools across Australia. We've reached over 25,000 children, parents and teachers. And we've now got 11 people running the program who have just been finalised certified to run the program around the country, so that we can continue this message. And again, that's not something that when we left Sydney that we set out on. I mean, the program that we run today, the MAD Food Science program in schools, is very different to when we left Sydney, because what I did was I used, every time a teacher said something to me about what was going on at the school, or the facilities manager at a school said, hey, can you talk to me? Let me show you what goes on in the playground. And he tells me a story about, you know, the poppers. You know, every time a kid has a popper, they rip off the plastic, and that bit of plastic that the straw in floats across the playground, and then, you know, they finish with the container. Some of them will put it in the bin, and then they have the straw they walk around and chew on while they play, and then they throw it. So he said, I've got 3 pieces of rubbish from one lunchbox food. Yeah. And so I've included any bit of feedback that we've got. I've found a way to massage it in and tell a story to kids about why the food they bring to school is so important. And it's just been, it's been incredible. And, you know, like now we're getting feedback from teachers that 9 out of 10 teachers believe that this program is so all-encompassing that it needs to be taught in all schools, which is just incredible.
Yeah. Oh, it's fantastic. I know through my own journey with my kids at school that the whole lunchbox thing is such an issue. And I hadn't really thought about the other, you know, the you're eating weird food conversation has been very real for my kids. But also once they get, my 3 older ones are all in high school. Actually, one's just finished year 12. But that lunchbox thing, they didn't want to carry around their lunchbox, and I don't send prepackaged food, so they just stopped eating at school. And it's just madness. It's just madness that the schools were not set up to support them to eat healthy food. It just is such a basic thing.
Yeah, and do you know, Edwina, in the schools around Australia, there's so much, like the schools are all trying so many different things just to see what they can get to work. But one of the biggest issues is that our kids only get 10 minutes eating time on average at schools. So the message that we're sending to the kids is food really isn't that important, just woof it down. Yeah. And we've been involved in a study with a school, and where we looked at the composition of lunchboxes and what kids are eating and what goes in the bin and not eaten. And what we know is they gravitate to those packaged foods because they're designed in a chemistry lab to get them to want to eat them first. And the other stuff that we're packing, they really don't, you know, like if that 10-minute time and it's like you can either eat or play, then, you know, realistically, what child is going to give up eating? I give up playing for eating. And I mean, I'm doing battle with my 7-year-old at the moment. He's just turned 8, about the same thing, you know, like he'll eat, you know, 75% of his lunchbox and then he'll eat the rest while he's waiting for the bus because he wants to play handball. And he said, Mum, I don't have time to eat it all.
Yep.
And, you know, so we have lots of conversations about how's your brain feeling when you get back into class and all of those kinds of things. But I guess there's, you know, schools are really, really doing their best. Yeah. And I'm given the fact that we're talking to, you know, predominantly parents in this group, I would imagine. The thing that I always like to say after I go in and educate and empower the kids, I provide parents with tips on how they can continue open-ended conversations at home with their kids. And so for me, I actually just want to make it easy for us parents to be able to get our kids to eat real food and not feel bad about it.
Yeah.
You know, and not have to have a fight every night.
Yeah.
And so some of the things that I like to get across are just to understand that, you know, when we send our kids to school, we send them to school to learn. And teachers will tell you now that they're spending anywhere between 5 and 70% of their time managing classroom behaviour rather than actually teaching, and that the last hour of the day is virtually unteachable.
Yeah.
And it's largely because of the lack of focus and concentration of kids are having. So lunch boxes are, for all intensive purposes, I know they're stressful for us, but they're actually really important for our kids because that's what's supposed to fuel their bodies and brains for the day. And so when we pack that lunchbox in the morning, we're outsourcing every aspect of their child for our children for the day, their socialization skills, their ability to sit and concentrate and to focus, their ability to retain information, and their ability to be respectful to the teachers. And I can tell you, like, after visiting 107 schools, that those teachers, they deserve a lot more money than what they're currently getting. And so if there's one message I could give everyone here is just to think about the importance of the lunchbox. And it doesn't have to be difficult to pack a healthy lunchbox. A really good quality sandwich with, you know, and I'm saying this and we don't do sandwiches, but a really good quality sandwich, which is what most people would be having, with good fats and good quality protein, is a great way of nourishing your child to keep them going for their main lunch. And, you know, fruits and vegetables with a great dip and some good crackers are fantastic. We don't need all that other stuff that, you know, really is made in a chemistry lab, first and foremost. You know, that's where it starts, and then it gets actually mass produced in a factory.
Yeah.
And those are the foods that send our kids up, and then they crash in their chair. Like, that's when they feel it, is when they're sitting in their chair. So the biggest message I like to give parents is that we need to have conversations at home about food and how it makes our body feel. You know, getting people to tune in. So it's a great little experiment you can do at home. It's like, after your kids have eaten, about 40 minutes after, you can do this on the weekend actually, after they've eaten, just say, oh, how are you? How's your body feeling? You know, you're happy, sad, tired, hungry. And in fact, most of us, if you happen to give your kids chips, you will know, for instance, that within an hour, like, Mom, I'm starving.
Yeah.
You know, whereas you don't really get that when you start to fill up your kids on more nourishing foods.
Yeah. They become more and more attuned to it the older they get. I find if my kids are, you know, going to a party or a sleepover or something, by the time they get home, it literally takes 24 or 48 hours, and they're like, Mum, I just need some veggies, or, you know, they become more and more attuned to how it makes them feel. And I think the less that they eat processed foods, the quicker it affects them.
Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, we see that with our own kids. And I've had parents say to me, oh, that's your fault because you don't let them eat it. Well, yes, but, you know, like, if I know they can feel so much better without it, why would I want them to not feel good all the time? You know, like, we've really lost that connection that food can fundamentally affect how we feel.
Yeah.
And when we start to tweak things, the changes we have, like when we were traveling, we pulled up to a caravan park in Perth. Yeah. And, you know, like our bus is huge. So, and it's green and it stands out. And like what always happens, you know, people flock, you know, first they stand back and they watch and then they flock. And one mum said to me that afternoon, she said, your bus was like the slap in the face that I needed. And I was like, oh, really? Like a bit taken aback. And she said, I jumped onto your website straight away and looked up what was this all about. And she said, you know what? I'm having so much trouble with my son. He's always in trouble at school. I fight with him from the moment he wakes up until the moment he goes to bed. I'm at the end of my tether. She said, perhaps it's what I'm feeding him. Yeah. And so I said to her, do you mind me asking, what is it that you're feeding him? And she rattled off, you know, like barbecue shapes and Zupa Dupas and so like for those people who are out there who may not be over, you know, all over things like additives and preservatives, there's an additive in barbecue shapes, which is 635. It's called disodium 5-ribonucleotides. Nice little thing. You will never have it in your own pantry. You can see it's made in a chemistry lab by that name. And it affects behaviour, learning difficulties, asthma, eczema, a whole host of things. So anyway, we went through the things that she was eating. And then she said to me, well, what can I do? And I said, well, you could spend a couple of hours on the weekend and do some planning and some really preparation to set you up for the week. She goes, oh, I don't have time. Yeah. And I said to her, look, let me flip this around. What would your day look like if you didn't have to fight with him for only half of the amount of time that you already were? Yeah. And she said, it would be amazing. Yeah. And I said, well, that's what's available if you start to tweak what he's eating. You know, like this isn't about throw out everything. It's just, you know, like let's look at the things that you're eating and change one thing at a time, you know, and make that a way of life. And then we left the van park a few days later and we come back probably about 2 weeks later and the family was still there because they had their kids in school at the time. Yeah. And she told me what she'd been doing and she said she had already started to see a difference in her child. Yeah. So there really is significant power in the food that we're eating, and our life as parents can become immeasurably easier when our kids are starting to have more nourished bodies and we're starting to take this stuff that our bodies don't know how to use. You know, like, I mean, I don't know if anyone's seen this, but you could probably Google it, is a little trailer from the Food Matters TV documentary series called Transcendence. And there's a short trailer in there with Dr. Libby Weaver where they've inserted a camera into people's bodies, and the one group is looking at noodles that are made from flour and water and then have broth stirred over them, and how our body digests it compared to, you know, those blocks of, you know, packet noodles that you get that you put the flavour sachet on and put boiling water over it. And what it shows is that the stuff that's made in the chemistry lab, our bodies 4 hours later have not had the ability to break that down yet at all. Yeah. And yet the stuff that's made from real ingredients has already started to turn into mush, ready for our body to use it to ship it out to all the cells. Yeah. So a lot of the ingredients in these foods that are now such a big part of the way we eat, like our bodies really don't know how to use them. And more importantly, we don't actually need them. You know, what we really do need is more fruits and vegetables and the all-important, you know, fibres that we get from them and the natural sugars that our bodies know how to use and the incredible flavours. And when we start to change our kids' taste buds away from those flavours, they see the magic in fruits and vegetables and they see that a carrot, you know, can be incredibly sweet. Yeah. But it does take a bit of time and effort.
Yeah, I know. I've said in another interview that you know, we get our fruit and veg delivered from a local farm, which is just such a luxury. It's beautiful. But every now and then when they're rude enough to take a holiday on me and I have to shop elsewhere, you know, or picking up a carrot that is not organic, the difference in the flavours, or tomatoes or anything like that, I truly understand why kids don't like veggies. Because the quality of the veggies that they're often is their first experience.
Yeah, yeah.
So that can make a big difference. And I bring that up because if there's mums out there that are listening whose kids are struggling with veggies, try getting an organic carrot or an organic tomato and just taste the difference, because the flavour is quite different.
Oh, it is. It's phenomenal. But I guess one of the things that I've learned as I travelled, like when we lived in Sydney, we were in the eastern suburbs of Sydney. So, you know, like kind of well-to-do area. Most of the parents were in high-paid corporate jobs. And, you know, you would assume that people had the disposable income to buy proper food.
Yep.
But what I can tell you is that at the schools in that area, there were quite a lot of children that were eating lots of packet foods and visibly didn't look well.
Yeah.
But we found that was pretty consistent right around Australia, you know, that life has become busy and stressful, and we really have unconsciously traded health for convenience.
Yeah.
And not because of anyone's fault, because I would have been still there had Israel not got sick.
Yeah.
But because of the messages that we're getting bombarded with, you know, like, you are busy, you need this is good. And then you go to the supermarket and it's right there in front of your face. And, you know, the subliminal messages that are getting sent to the kids from the packets, you know, it's just incredible. So one of the biggest learnings that I got from meeting so many thousands and thousands of parents is really just to understand that everyone, you know, is at a different point on their health journey. And so I quite often get asked about, would you buy everything organic? And when we were traveling, it was very difficult. It was even difficult to find ourselves at a spot at the same time a farmer's market was on. But did that stop me from buying fruits and vegetables for my family? No. I mean, I was more diligent with making sure that, you know, we washed them and things like that. But I put, you know, fruits and vegetables as a priority for my family, because I believe that our health is the number one thing. You know, like, we only get one body for life. This is a message that we give kids. You know, the body that you're sitting in today is the one that you were born in. It's the one that you're going to go into high school in. It's the one that you're going to grow old in. Yeah. And every time we eat something, it's either going to help our body or not help our body. Yeah. So we don't label foods. It's either help our body or not help our body. Yeah. And so messages that I like to share with parents is that try to do the best you can with the budget that you've got, but always remember, ultimately, when you're buying foods, ask yourself the question, is this helping my child or is this not helping my child? Because if it's not, and you're finding yourself doing that more often or not, then we really need to change. Yeah. Those changes don't need to be difficult. I mean, it's not like look, the ultimate pinnacle is to buy everything, you know, from the organic, and to have, you know, ethically raised, you know, meat and, you know, your fish, etc. But most people, including ourselves, we don't have a budget that stretches that far. So, you know, getting people to go, okay, well, I'm down at this end and my budget can't stretch all the way over here, but what is it that I can do? And if that means just buying fruits and vegetables from your supermarket because it's accessible, and then washing them with apple cider vinegar and water when you get home, then do that. Yeah. You know, that is far superior than giving your kids those noodles which have no nourishment in it. Yeah. And practice doing that at home. You know, make fruits and vegetables your go-to snack. When the kids say they're hungry, have some already cut up in the fridge and pull it out and serve it with a couple of crackers, maybe a little bit of good quality cheese from a block, and, you know, and a great dip like a homemade hummus. Yeah. Serve that as your starting point. But the minute you kind of make these processed snacks that are, you know, made in the chemistry lab, the minute they're visible to our kids, they want them. Yeah. I mean, and we can be as diligent as we want, but we'll always end up with a fighter in our hands, because that's, you know, that's the way they're made to get us to do that. Yeah.
I think it's the same for us mums, Belle. You know, if I've got that stuff in the house, I find it very hard to leave it alone. You know, it is marketed to be hugely appealing from visual aspect and from a taste aspect. You know, they spend thousands making sure that we can't leave it alone.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, one of the lessons we teach the children, and then follow up when we do our parent session, is to ask the question, you know, what's in my food? So it's not about saying don't eat this food, because look, that is the culture. That's the environment that our kids are growing up in. So saying no is always going to get us that headbutt that our kids love to have with us. I mean, you know, I lived with my mum for 8 months while we were building our bus. The whole family did. And she would, you know, be telling me what to do. And in my head, I'm saying, don't tell me what to do, Mum. You know, we still have that battle at this age. So our kids, the minute we say no, that's like, okay, I'm going to go and find a way of getting it, you know. So the art of this, of asking what's in my food is, as parents, I say, don't say no. Just say, I don't know, what's in it? And get them to turn the packet around. So the very first step is getting everyone to understand that that front of that packet is just marketing science. You know, it's a company that has a marketing team that looks at the psychology of colour, the psychology of words, the characters. Everything is designed to either attract a parent's attention, like no added MSG or no artificial colours and flavours, right down to the cute little caricatures that they create for the kids. Yeah. Everything is designed to get us, but it doesn't tell us what's in there. Yeah. And then I say to the kids, and what's inside those flavours that you are already associating with that packet? That's food science. That still doesn't tell you what's in it and whether it helps your body. So we get them to flip it around and to look for ingredients, not the nutritional information panel, which is hugely important, of course, but that categorises the ingredients. It doesn't tell you specifically what's in it. Yeah. So a very simple lesson that every mum that's out there that you could do with your kids right now is when they say, can I have that? Don't say no. Just say, oh, I don't know what's in it. Let's have a look at the ingredients and turn that packet around and make a big deal about it. Oh, that doesn't tell me what's in it. Turn it around and count the ingredients. Yeah. And we always say use about 6 as your marker, because if Mother Nature's perfect package of an apple or an orange and our body knows how to use it and it needs it, the further we get away from that one, you know, the less likely it is it's going to help our body. Yeah. You know, and we are really spoilt for choice. There is a lot of packets on those supermarket shelves. Yeah. So if you really want to have the convenience of packaged foods, the secret is eat more fruits and vegetables, minimise the packets, but be smart about what you buy by saying what's in my food. Yeah. And you do that with your kids because you want to actually get them to take ownership of saying, oh, what is that? You know, like what does, you know, 282 mean, Mum? And, you know, look up the chemical amaze app, for instance, and find out what is it derived from? Yeah. You know, what could it possibly do to my body? Just start asking what's in my food. And like I said, flipping it around. Don't say no because they want it. You know, flip it around and find out what's in it.
Yeah. I actually tell people to pretty much ignore the nutrition label. The ingredients label will tell you everything that you need to know.
Yeah.
That's just my take on it.
I can tell you from travelling around, the 2 biggest packets that actually seem to get the most attention from kids, because when we talk about fruits and vegetables and then we do an experiment about tasting with your tongue, not your eyes, and then we talk about this food that's made in the chemistry lab in a factory, we put on a lab coat and goggles and, you know, talk about that, and then we pull out foods out of our bag, you know, processed foods, tiny teddies, muesli bars, all of that kind of stuff. And then we pull out a bottle of blue Gatorade, and I can guarantee 90% of the schools, regardless of the age of the kids, even the kids like in reception or prep or kindy, whatever the state is calling that very first age group, there's even kids in there that go, yum, when you pull it out. I know you would think Gatorade, okay, you're thinking probably teenagers, like high school kids, but we're talking about primary school kids. This drink has such a hold over people. You know, it's got 9 teaspoons of sugar in it. The first ingredient's water, the next 2 are sugars. Yeah. You know, like, so, and not to mention that colour, you know, blue, is derived from petroleum. Yeah. You know, our kids' bodies don't need this, no. You know, and yet, yum, it's got such a hold over them. And the next one is Up and Go, you know, like also, you know, gets like a huge response. Yeah. And, you know, when you look at the sugar content in that, you know, might be all right from an adult perspective if they don't eat a lot of other processed things with sugar in it for the day. But for a child to start their day on that, they would be up and then they'll be crashing in their school chair when they start. So, we just need to be having open-ended conversations about what's in my food.
Yeah.
Let's look at it.
Yeah, my kids have had, friends that come to school with a Red Bull for breakfast, and then we wonder why, all our kids are medicated for ADHD and behavioural problems. It's just, I just think that we need to have more and more of these conversations, because it is that idea that because so many people do, it's become normal, because so many people are being diagnosed with all these different things that really are diet and lifestyle related. It's become normal. I remember once I posted an article that I'd read, and I think, don't quote me on this, but I think the title was "Why French Kids Don't Have ADHD." Now, we started off with our conversation about how they get 10 minutes to eat at school. In French schools, they lay a table and sit at a table with a knife and fork to eat their lunch. Now, I don't know if that's in every school, and I'm sure I'm romanticising some of it, but as an ideal in my mind, but I think that is the norm from my understanding. And they don't have the rates of ADHD and those sort of problems that we have. And I think, I think it's all interconnected. And I know I've met lots of people because, they have a different point of view, but I think it's worth the conversation.
It is definitely worth the conversation, particularly for, being a parent that is dealing with those kinds of behaviours from the children. It's really, really difficult. And in fact, because a lot of that is driven by the foods which are designed to get our kids to want to keep craving it and going back for it, it is actually really hard work for parents to try to change those kinds of behaviours. Sometimes it's just so overwhelming. But I think the latest research I read, which is, it takes so long from when a study's done to the research being released. That's almost like, well, how outdated is the data now, given it's taken like 2 years for it to come to light. I think from 2012, the data was that 1 in 7 of our children are now diagnosed with ADHD. So I picture that in a classroom. And in a high school classroom, 1 in 4 of our kids are likely to be suffering some kind of mental illness. So, and food has a massive connection on all of that. And we really do, we really need to start taking stock of it. And the reason why I talk about the power of parents is because we cannot sit back and wait for the government to take action on this. I've just been involved earlier this year in the Federal Senate Committee into the obesity epidemic in Australia, and we put in a submission about what we believe needs to happen in schools around food. And we were invited to come and give evidence to the committee. And in part of my research to that, I started looking at what things have the government done before, what have they been involved in? And obviously there's the Health Star rating system. So when you look at the Health Star rating system and the groups that were involved in that, there's quite a few lobby groups that were in there. And, to be honest, I think it's fair to say that it's done an okay job, but it's far from being good, really. And then, there was in 2011, there was a whole lot of recommendations put forward to the government around labelling of foods, about making energy drinks available or not available to kids. There's the kinds of things that Jamie Oliver's been fighting for in the UK and finally winning. That was 7 years ago. And nothing has happened. And I think we've probably had maybe 5 or 6 prime minister changes in that time. So, I'm going to continue my fight with this. And in fact, in a 2 weeks' time, I'm taking a senator into a school so she can see firsthand what kids are actually bringing to school to eat. But I guess my message to parents is the power of us is we don't have to wait for any of that. We can change things at home ourselves. And then if you like what's happening with this group, where you get a group of your mums together, your friends together, and we're all learning the same thing, if we all start feeding our kids better together and sending them off to school together, our kids feel normal because their friends are eating those foods, and we can change what's happening. We don't have to wait. And that's the power of us parents.
I would go so far as to say we can't wait. we can't wait. If we look at the current statistics and what's happening to the health of our kids, it's actually become an emergency. It's become something that is absolutely urgent for the kids across our country. It's they're talking, it's 8 in 10 kids leaving school in the year 2020 are going to be overweight or obese. It's that whole normalizing conversation.
Yeah. Oh, it is because it's kind of become taboo to talk about weight. And look, to be honest, to me, as I've travelled, I've seen a lot of kids that are visibly not well, but I can also pick up the signs of the kids that outwardly look well, that I know inwardly, if they had tests done, like on their bloods, they wouldn't be. So, the thing that we actually really need to get to, because I've had a lot of parents say to me, oh, my son plays a lot of sport, I don't need to worry about him, or it's everything in moderation, or let kids be kids. And, the reality is food is very different to where it was 20 years ago. And it doesn't matter what shape or size your child is. If every day you are giving your child a sometimes food, so every day you're giving them a discretionary food or a sometimes food or a junk food, you're still giving your child a food every day, the one body they've got for life. Every day you're giving them a food that's not helping them at some point of time. And our bodies just aren't meant to deal with that. So over time, day in, day out, it adds up. And at some point of time, it's going to manifest in something, a health condition that our children, whether it's a mental condition, whether it's a behavioural issue, whether it's a learning difficulty, whether it's, like heart disease. I mean, a project that we did with a school down near Nowra where we looked at what was going on in lunchboxes, we had an integrative GP involved. And she said she is seeing children as young as 12 presenting with heart conditions and high blood pressure. These are things that used to happen to us in our 50s and 60s from years of neglect of our bodies. Our kids haven't even lived any of their life yet. And it's happening. So I guess my real call is to everyone out there, wherever you're at is totally perfect, because we all have to start somewhere, which is really, really important to understand. None of this is meant to be so that we beat ourselves up. It's like, you know what? I've been making choices that I thought were right, but now I've learned something that's different, and I really don't want to do that anymore. So I'm going to take steps to make a change. And that's the power of us, because we can do that. It doesn't matter if someone says this is, like a 4.5 star rating and it's allowed to be in your canteen. You don't have to let your kid buy that. You don't have to just sit back on your hands at your school and let it happen either. You can have conversations with your school about things that you're not happy about. So there is momentum building.
I think it's a disempowering conversation to go into. I've been getting it all wrong, and I don't know. This is the empowering conversation comes from going, okay, I now have information to know that if we do these tweaks in our diet, things are going to get better. And that's an empowering conversation.
It is. And just to know that no one has it sorted at all. I mean, we're still learning. I mean, in fact, this year my daughter went into year 7. And so the start of the year, she was packing like the lunch boxes, the bento style lunch boxes that we've had, and her fridge to go back with the cooler brick. She was doing all of that. Come year, term 2, it was a bit more of a struggle. Do I have to really take that lunchbox? And more and more of her lunch was coming home uneaten. And she's the sort of girl, she needs her food because she really gets hangry, And so I kind of just let go. Like I said, okay, well, how food makes you feel. What do you want to do? So she went through this stage of, I'm going to have, gluten. So, she introduced having a bit more gluten into her week, and she started to see all sorts of things happening with her skin. So that was a bit of a thing. And only this morning she said to me, I'm not having gluten anymore, Mum. I'm like, okay, fair enough. And then she's gone through, I don't want to take that kind of lunchbox anymore. I want to eat my food, but I just don't want to take that lunchbox anymore. I said, fine, you sort out what you want to do.
Yeah.
And so even now we're still going through that process. I call it the festival of lunchboxes now, because she has so many containers taking the same amount of food that she used to have in just one.
Yeah.
But in her head,
Yep.
what goes on is she can pick one of them up and walk around, in the playground with the girls, whereas when it was the big one that had everything in it, she couldn't easily do that.
Yeah.
So I guess the thing is no one knows your kids better than you, and you've just got to test and try things. But the best thing you can do is let them feel they've got a bit of ownership in it as well. On our website, there's a section called Lunchbox Tools, and then underneath Fun for Kids, and there's a sheet you can download with lots of different colours of fruits and vegetables on it. And you can, one of the things that I always get parents to do is get their kids to circle at least one fruit and vegetable from each colour of the rainbow, and just, say, can I have some more of those? And so when you go shopping, you say to your kids, what fruits and veggies do you want this week? What's on your chart? And it lets them feel like they're taking ownership of what's going in their lunchbox for that week.
Yeah.
So, which is very different to us putting in, broccoli or whatever. I mean, even now, even though we do that with our kids, I still today said to my son, what do you want, broccoli or beans today? So that he made the decision that he wanted broccoli, which, for me, as starting the morning, it's like, okay, well, I've got two choices. Both of them are ready to go, but which one is it that he wants today? So that he takes ownership of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As we've gone through this series, I've asked each of the speakers what their favourite breakfast is, as a way to kind of bring it back to some more practical ideas for people. But I think for you, what's your favourite lunchbox to put together? And I know you're saying that your kids pack, but just to give mum something a little bit concrete, a picture.
Hands down, if you can get your kids to eat leftovers from dinner,
yes,
it will make your life so much easier for lunchboxes. Seriously, so much easier. But if you want some tips on what you can do, you don't think you can get your kids to eat cold leftovers, investment in a good quality thermos is always, and I'm talking about, you probably need to spend $40, but it will last you over a couple of years. We've also got on our website, if they just type into the search bar cold leftovers, I've written a whole article about how I trained my family to eat cold leftovers.
Yeah.
And seriously, it does change your world. You just make sure that when you cook dinner, that there's enough to go into the lunch boxes the next day. So that's a big thing. And if you want to know about how to pack a really good sandwich, I've got an article. A boy asked me in one of my classes. I love the questions that kids ask. They're so insightful. He really got that bread, to a large degree, is processed.
Yep.
Now, a lot of adults don't get that. Mm-hmm. So I encourage everyone out there that's packing sandwiches to turn the packets around and look at the ingredients in the bread that you're buying, number one. Look out for preservative 282. It's called calcium propionate, and it's linked to behavioural issues and learning difficulties. And so if you've got a child that's suffering that, then it could be reaction to that in the bread. But I wrote a whole blog post in answer to his question, is a sandwich healthy? And so I cover, what makes a good bread, what makes a good filling, examples of good fillings. So again, if you just type into the search bar healthy sandwich, you should be able to find that article as well. I run an e-course that helps busy parents pack lunch boxes in about 5 minutes a day without packets. So my foundation rule in there is, if you pack a piece of fruit and a vegetable and a whole grain if you're eating grains, and a dairy if you're eating dairy, of course, and a protein source and a good fat and a healthy snack. Now, I'm going to say, I personally don't believe our kids need snacks every day if you've packed a whole lunch. But what we're competing here is what everyone else is eating. So if everyone else around them's eating tiny teddies or, LCM bars, then having something that you've either controlled at home that you've made and you've put a big stash in your freezer, or you've chosen something off the shelf that you're actually happy with, putting that in and encouraging them to eat that after they've eaten their, great sandwich that you made them is worthwhile, because at least they feel like they're friends. Yeah. So if you follow those foundation rules, then you will actually be able to, keep your kids full and give them the best possibility for learning as well. And that e-course, there's like 140 different recipes that have been kid tested over, and not just my kids, like I'm talking about I think we've had about 700 mums go through the program in the last 3 years. So, all of them have been tested in one way or another. And, there's sandwich options, non-sandwich options, and vegetarian options. So there's lots of different things in there. But I've also got loads of free recipes on my website too. So, and my style of cooking is, well, I could say I'm not a fancy cook. I'm not a master chef by any stretch. I mean, I used to use Maggi packet mix. Does that tell you what my cooking's like? So I've got a core set of pantry staples, and I like to be able to create multiple meals from them. Yeah. And quite honestly, a lot of my recipes are designed so that I can make them one way and then I can turn it into at least 2 other things. Yeah. So that's just so that like maybe you make a batch of like mince, for instance, for making hamburgers. Yeah. But you turn some of them into meatballs, and, just so that you put some in your freezer and you can still have them that week, but to the kids, it looks different, even though it's made from the exact same ingredients.
Yeah. I think real food is really simple. Just, a few beautiful colours of veggies and some good quality sausages is a perfectly good meal. It doesn't have to be more complicated.
No. And you know what? You don't need a lot of fancy equipment in your kitchen. You can turn out really good meals. In fact, I drive my kids mad, because quite often I'll sit down and I'll say, see, kids, when you've got good ingredients in your house, you can always turn out a great meal, even if you think you've got nothing in the house. And it's true, Yeah, you really can.
Yeah, my kids will still stand at the pantry. It's full of food, and open the Mum, there's nothing to eat. Still.
And particularly teenagers. Like, I don't know about you, but like our daughter she's eating as much as Israel, and he's 6'4". I'm like, when do you stop? Yeah. And then I remember I was the same when I was at school. My mum used to say to me, have you got worms? Because I was always eating, So, yeah.
Yeah. I think, I'm a really, one of my messages that I say over and over again is it starts at home. It starts with what we're doing. Yeah. And that will lay the foundation for our kids' beliefs and habits throughout life. And that is my belief. But I do see the absolute power in those messages being supported at school. So I know that there's going to be lots of mums that they hear what you're doing. How do we make that happen? Or how do we start to bring that into our schools across the country?
Yeah. Look, I have to say today, before coming on here, I've been in tears twice from feedback that we've got. So we've got a lady who's coming back to Australia, but she's been in America living. And so she's been training up to be a mad food science instructor over in America. And so part of her, her training has been, she's been running, practicals. And she sent us this message this morning from a mum who got her daughter to attend one of her practicals. And she said, I just want to let you know, my daughter has never been one to try new food. She's a very fussy eater. And last night I served lasagna, and at first she turned her nose up at it. And then I said, well, what was that thing that Miss Karen said, that you need to, taste with your tongue, not your eyes? And her daughter said, oh, yeah, Mum, not just one taste, you've got to have 2, because we talk about the fact that we're just going to ask you for 2, but do you know that sometimes your tongue can take 7 to 20 times? So we do all that theatrics. Yeah. And the mum said her daughter tried it once, and then she tried it again, and then she realised she liked it. And the mum was like, this is just incredible. It's had such a big impact. And then another mum from a school that we were at over in Adelaide sent me a message of what the teacher's now doing in class. She's renamed Tuesdays to Mad Food Science Day, and she's creating different smoothies for the kids to try, because our taste test experiment is getting kids to to drink a green smoothie, you know, because most kids think it's yuck. And so she is doing her own Mad Food Science Tuesdays, where she creates smoothies in class and gets the kids to try them, and it's always got to have a vegetable in it. Yeah. So it's really, really powerful stuff. So if you are interested in that, if you go onto our website, which is therootcause.com.au, there'll be a box saying Mad Food Science on there. If you click onto that, it will take you through to all the information about the program, you know, what it covers, our all of the FAQs, because these are the things that the schools are going to ask you. So make sure you have a flick through them, and then you'll receive an email back when you enter in your details with like an information pack for you to take to the school. And it will also include the studies, you know, like there's studies that have actually shown that, you know, children who eat more fruits and vegetables behave better in class. And so the trade-off is for the schools, like some of them think, oh, well, we already have this covered in the curriculum, but this specifically addresses what kids are eating with reference to what goes on in the classroom, which is very, very, very different to other programs, because this is all about saying what you eat at school affects how you behave for your teacher and how you learn. So you can do all of that. So, so therootcause.com.au, and a quick way is just go /MFS after that, and that will take you straight to the page.
Perfect. I know you have a gift for our audience. Did you have a second to tell us what that is, please?
Yeah, look, if you jump onto our website, you can click up the top. There's like a free ebook that we give you. It's called our Just Get Started Guide. So it's got a collection of recipes in there which have been long used for us, that go into the freezer, a little bit of a tip on planning and preparation. And really, I guess it's just designed to give you a bit of encouragement to just get started, because it doesn't take a lot. So, you know, just a few simple recipes that you can start including in your lunch boxes. I always do say, though, in my e-course, try everything at home first, because you don't want your kids going to school and then biting into something and not liking it, and therefore going hungry, because that's the worst thing for them. So make them for afternoon tea snacks, or even for breakfast. Most of my stuff that I tend to make can be turned into a breakfast or an evening meal or a snack. So have a go at that as well. So yeah, you can just go to the website, therootcause.com.au, and click on the free ebook, and you'll be able to get that.
That's perfect. We'll pop a link for it under the video, and they can grab it easily from there. Thank you so much. This has been a fantastic conversation, and being able to support our kids at home and then through programs in school, it's all coming together. I love it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. My pleasure. And just remember, everyone out there, like, you really do have the power. We don't have to wait for anyone else. You can start at home, and if you get your friends on board as well, and it makes it so much easier.
Yeah. Yay. Thanks so much. All right. Bye for now.
Bye.